Good evening. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for this exciting conversation on multidisciplinary practices. My name is Habi Diallo. I'm a writer. I work across fashion, music, art, and film, and I'm on the digital team at Dazed. I'm thrilled to welcome two extraordinary creatives who I'm sure you know, but to lead this conversation. First, we have Bianca Saunders, an award-winning designer redefining menswear, and her work is a masterful fusion of identity, culture, and technical precision with designs that feel very personal and tell universal stories. And also joining her is Armand Da Silva, a visionary photographer, director, and co-founder of Time and Space. Through his work, Armand reimagines the relationship between visuals, furniture, and spatial design, creating timeless and immersive experiences, which you are all in right now, and blur the lines between art and function. So it's a joy to be here and to be with you guys and with you two today. So I guess starting on where we are, I wanted to know, Armand, if you could tell us a bit more of the story of Time and Place.
Well, thank you everyone for coming, by the way. It's familiar faces, some new, a lot of new faces, but appreciate the love and support, first of all. How did Time and Space start? So me and my partner, she isn't here right now, we just started collecting furniture for our future house. And the stuff we used to buy and collect, we used to store it in a storage, small little storage. And then we decided to get a space just for our respective fields in what we do. So my partner, she's a nail artist, I'm a photographer, so we wanted a space initially just where we could kind of work from and cultivate our craft. And then we thought about it and we thought, well, it doesn't make sense having or paying for a storage and paying for a studio. So we took the decision to move the furniture into the space and actually start curating the space and inviting people to come down and actually experience the space. That's pretty much how it kind of started. And a lot of our friends used to ask us, oh, do you rent the furniture? But we used to say no, because there was always that fear of maybe clients might not look after the pieces, or they might get damaged, or but we kind of just had to let go of that fear, and now it's become what it's become now.
Nice, thank you. So great to now see it in its form now.
Yeah.
And Bianca, could you give us a short summary on how you first kind of got started in design and starting with that?
So I always knew I wanted to do design, and I always was interested in art and fashion, and actually, to be fair, I don't think I was that interested in fashion. I just liked making things, and I think making things really was the perfect way of combining fashion. And what really built the brand was people around me and my community. And those people really inspired me, and I kind of used, I guess, those conversations with okay, this sparks in terms of how I perceive the men around me. And that's what kind of pushed me even more to kind of create menswear that has a sort of empathetic feel to it, and introduce myself in my femininity and how that masculinity combines together. From there, my mum was a hairdresser, so I used to read a lot of magazines, and a lot of people would I'll see what schools I used to go to, and seeing, doing the masters was a good thing. So from doing my master at the RCA, I just started the brand. And the first thing that I did was I created this exhibition it used to be called Ace Hotel, and it was the club space downstairs. So I was okay, when I graduate, I want to create a big impact and create an exhibition, which got my friends to DJ. I did this whole, it was kind of like a projection display of the film that I made for my final collection. And then also I had this amazing photographer called Armand Da Silva. She went to college with me and she shot these images, and I printed those out and used all my resources and that sort of stuff. And I worked with Akinola, and then I was that's how I ended up. We was having lunch there, and his friend came over that had the space, and I was oh, it'd be great to do this. So it's quite interesting to see how this kind of works out, having friends and also creating spaces to make community build within it.
Yeah, That's so interesting. I feel like community is kind of the basis of a lot of what we're talking about today. So another thing I wanted to know is, how did you two first meet? Do you remember?
How did we meet? I'm sure it was it the What Women in 22 show?
Yeah, so we met through my, oh gosh, I get feedback. We met through my partner, Terry. So I've seen you working, and they worked together on like film stuff, and I was doing the AEW 22 show, and then
In Paris?
In Paris. And I think you came down to help with the filming, because I was like, we needed like extra camera angles. So that worked out really well, and then you guys worked together quite a lot, so
Yeah.
that was the first time we met.
Yeah. Good.
And so the two of you have partnered to create, like, work on this exciting concept store and this collaboration. So I was wondering, how did that collaboration come about, and how did you kind of decide you wanted to bring your creative visions together, and what were you hoping to achieve?
So my friend Jeff, we worked together quite a lot on different projects and stuff like that, and I was like, okay, I really want to do something where the clothes can exist, and we just can't do something where it's just like rails kind of thing, and we need to show more of the community in terms of like how I want the world to exist within like the brand Bianca Saunders space. And I went here last year when it first opened.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, this would be a really good space. And then Jeff was like, oh, I'm actually going to the space. Then I guess he spoke to you and was like, okay, let's make this work. As well as like kind of thinking about the idea of like people around me and connecting. So that's how the series of talks kind of came about. And I was like, you know what, I actually have so many great friends that haven't met each other. Let's try and do that connection, and then have friends that have like parallels. So the first talk was with Kushida and Shanti, and they both do like sort of spatial product design and involving community. And then the second one was with Ben Broom and Jaden Ali, who both are creators, but Jaden works more like very old institutions and does architecture to create, whereas Ben is a creator of like his community, so people, different artists he's worked with across like New York, Paris and London, and bringing those art pieces together that kind of create like a radical exhibition where it includes music and film and people. So I thought I like the idea of like being able to use conversations to display the worlds.
And Armand, for you, what kind of drew you, what felt like it aligned with your brand and your beliefs to kind of work on this project?
Yeah, in all honesty, I think it just made sense. And because the space, essentially, yeah, the furniture and the chairs is like, that's the driving vehicle, but essentially it's about design in general, whether that's fashion, architecture, you name it. So when Bianca and Jeff kind of proposed the idea, I was just like, well yeah, let's do it. Because my main thing was to kind of bring communities together. Well, Bianca's community might not necessarily have not been necessarily exposed to like design in this aspect. So I thought it would be a perfect collaboration where people can come and see like Bianca's world from this space.
And since we're speaking so much about multidisciplinary practices, and both of your work kind of bridges different practices and different mediums, I wanted to know what drew each of you to work across different like mediums instead of just one, because sometimes I guess it's maybe easier to just kind of narrow and focus on like one thing, even if we have like multiple interests. So I wanted to know for both of you, like, what was that like to expand and try different mediums and different disciplines?
I was like, I think you should go first. I think that's what keeps me excited about the brand is like when I first started it, I was like, I never wanted it just to be about the clothes. Like sometimes that kind of gets me a bit like, oh, this is a bit boring. I need to be creative. And next year, my aim or like my resolution for the year is to kind of like reignite that creativity, because I think you have to constantly keep like sharpening that tool, because otherwise it ends up just being a business. And of course, the brand is a business, but what has made the brand is the creativity behind it. I love design, and I've had opportunities to create furniture back in like 2022, and then that kind of like stopped, and I was like, you know what, I think let's keep building that world around that, because I would like to be able to do more projects with creative pieces for the home, and also thinking about like what my future stores would look like and that sort of stuff, and I want people to kind of already be able to imagine that for me and myself as well too. So I think those things, but as I was saying from the beginning, that I got into design because I wanted to just make things, and I think that's what really makes it important for me.
Yeah, and another thing I was wondering is, obviously collaboration is teamwork, so even in this project or other projects that you've both worked on, I was wondering, how do you find that you kind of keep your own like individual aesthetic and like what feels natural to you, but also navigate like collaboration with someone else who maybe has like a different perspective and like different references to you? Like, how do you bridge the gap of finding like the happy medium?
It's a good question. I think, me personally, I think just let each individual like be, if that makes sense. Don't try too hard to change, or I don't know, man. How would you?
I think I can't. I think it's more of a vibe check. It's like that sort of thing. I'm like, okay, I think we're vibing. This the idea's going, because so Shanti Bell, who's one of the speakers, like was further into the week, so she's gonna create a piece for my show that will be in January, and she was talking about her work, and we both went to the RCA, but we followed each other for a while, so I was like, she was talking about exactly how, because she previously did menswear, and now she's gone into like furniture and that sort of thing, and the way she was describing it, I was like, oh, I actually can like really feel excited about it, and I think that's what kind of bridges and lifts the partnership to be a partnership. I think that's what makes a project more exciting, because then in the past I'm like, if it doesn't, I think you have to really both be like bouncing off each other, so it ends up being something that's a bit more like back and forth, and also a bit feels like it's a natural relationship. And I think that's kind of happened when I've even made like artwork for like Ben's show that we did in Paris, and that was like in 2021. And he was just like, create whatever you want, and I was like, what does that mean? And he's like, and then it all came together like nicely, because it's like people that he's vibed with, to kind of like understand that their brain is going to work in a way that's going to respond to that perfectly.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like if something is like meant to be, it feels natural and like not forced. And Bianca, I wanted to ask you, describe the concept store as like an interactive gallery where, you know, like spatial design and storytelling kind of play a part in this immersive experience. And I was wondering, like, how do you think for you that relates specifically to like your fashion design like ethos? And do you find that when you're approaching like maybe making your collection or your last collection or the one you're working on now, do you consider like how these pieces kind of come to life in like a different way as you're like making them in like physical form?
I think usually when I see it on a person, that's when it really does come to life, because it's kind of like bringing a bunch of pieces together to make a story. And I guess that collaboration idea, like we were like this week working with the stylists I'm working with, and then we're like thinking about, is this going to tell the story clear enough without wasting the idea? And I think that's something within fashion, you can kind of see that working throughout people's collections, like the story's repeated, so it doesn't actually just waste the idea, it's kind of extending it. I hope that's answering the question.
Yeah, no, it does perfectly. And Armand, I had like a similar question, but in terms of your work as a photographer, as well as like curating spaces and the director of the space. So like, how would you say you kind of approach, did you think how you approach maybe photography kind of impacts the other work and like vice versa? And obviously photography with image is like one-dimensional, whereas a lot of these like furniture and these pieces, like there's so much to them by looking at them 360. So yeah, I was wondering how maybe you found that working in this space has like impacted your work in photography as well.
I'd say it makes me think about how I take my images more. Definitely makes me think about the world around what I'm shooting, the set, or whatever you want to call it. It just makes me think of my work like more like composition-wise. Definitely makes me think about that a lot more. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to like mixing both, I do enjoy mixing both, like the photography with the furniture, with the set, because I think it just goes hand in hand. So,
Perfect. And do you find that you've probably now, like working across different mediums, have like reached like new audiences and like reached different people? Like how has that been for both of you?
Yeah, no, I think even being in a space and meeting people that have come to view it and stuff is definitely like reached different audiences and very like unexpected as well too, which has been really great because I guess the height of like the brand was usually like the pandemic, and then I didn't really get to experience people in person or like understand what the feedback was with like the design work and like who is actually connecting with and that sort of thing. But I think now it's like, oh, okay, wow, it's actually broadening a lot more purposefully into people that I exactly wanted to reach. So I think that's been great.
And for you, has there been any similar experiences or maybe different?
What was the question
Do you feel like you've kind of reached like new audiences and like it's led you to interact with different people in probably like different ways because you work across such a range?
Yeah, no, definitely. Because there's people that are interested in design, and not like people are also interested in the other medium, photography. So there's always going to be that. I mean, you want to call the set of people that are interested in design and the set of people that are interested in photography. So it definitely like broadened the community, I would say.
And another thing I wanted to know is kind of on like the challenges of doing different things and being like a multi-hyphenate, because I feel like sometimes maybe, I don't know, I know for me if I like wake up and I want to kind of only write about one thing, I'm like hyper-fixating on music and then I forget that I even have like interests in other things. And I feel like it can also be quite overwhelming to be interested in different things and like navigating all of that. So I wonder for you, like when you maybe are like working on an exhibition or it's like working on a collection at the same time and balancing so many different things, do you find it maybe easier to streamline and like focus on one then do the other, or do they all kind of help when you're working on all of them together?
It does and it doesn't, because then I feel like the way that I think is like as if it's a massive brand kind of thing. So I was like, if it was a big brand, they would have multiple people kind of helping to kind of like create a strategy to how this is going to be communicated. People understand, okay, she's doing something new or she's doing something different kind of thing. But I think there's so many projects and ideas that I have. I'm like, okay, we can't do everything at once. And next year is intended to be a bit more like purposefully driven in terms of like strategizing how that's going to be released to our audience. So I think thinking about that is something that's in my mind at the moment.
And I also wanted to know, are there any other kind of practices that you maybe both of you haven't necessarily tried yet that you'd be intrigued to kind of seeing if you like want to create something in?
Probably get into furniture design. Yeah, but I guess it's just finding the time to do it because, yeah, it does take time. Maybe like Bianca, you can elaborate more on that because I know you designed the chair. But there's a lot to think about when it comes to furniture design, like materials, form, function, all of that kind of stuff. So, how did it go when you designed the chair?
I was so excited about designing a chair that I was supposed to make clothes as well too. So the chair inspired the clothing. So I was like, okay. And a lot of the things I'm interested in are usually surrounded by artwork. So the chair was inspired by like Francis Bacon, and I was like thinking about like the idea of reclining and creating something that could also sit on the ground as well as like sit on like a piece of metal. So no one's actually seen it in person because it hasn't actually come to this country. It's been to like Berlin and like Paris and stuff like that. But hopefully one day I can do more pieces and show it. But everything that I usually make is usually quite interchangeable, and I think people can kind of see that with the clothes, so it had that aspect of it. But I think it was interesting because then like the mechanics of building a chair is so expensive and it took like a longer time. Of course, clothes take the same amount of time, but it was really interesting. We got to work with like this furniture company called Castelli, and they're based in Bologna in Italy, and they make like chairs for like Chanel stores and all the rest of it. And then we was also working, when we first did the project, it was with an independent designer, and it was like, okay, this is not working out, but it's interesting to see it on like a scale of like as an individual designer, because I guess I had people helping me. I designed it, and then there was extra members to kind of like help idealize it and figure out whether it's going to work. So.
That's so cool. I can't wait to see it. And something else I wanted to speak to you both about is where you kind of go to find like your references and your inspiration when working on things. Because I'm sure we're all quite keen to know like what that process is like for you. I know Bianca, we've spoken in the past about like music and the impact like music has on like what you're listening to and what you're creating. I'd love to know from you as well. Like
for me, for me, I'm really inspired by like, I'm gonna sound really old-fashioned, but I'm inspired by like the 60s and 70s. Everything they did back then, I think it really resonates with me. I would definitely say traveling the world like inspired me heavily, especially in terms of getting space. I went to Japan and LA were definitely like two like pivotal kind of moments when I traveled. LA because I just saw how everything over in America is like on a big scale, right? And I just saw how similar to this space, like people were just over there are young and they're thriving, and it made me think about like, why isn't this happening in London? Why isn't like a space like that over the space that I saw in LA? Why isn't there anything over like that over here? So that kind of inspired me to kind of push forward and create a space. And Japan just being, I don't know if any of you has ever been to Japan, but that literally like changed my life.
It's quite interesting because I feel like a lot of people, when it comes to things, they're like, it feels like it's in New York, but it's not New York, but it could also feel like it's in Stockholm or like somewhere that actually has vast space. And I feel like it's quite precious. Most people don't have things that exist like this in London, so we definitely need to take the most of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And Bianca, do you want to share maybe how you find some of your inspirations and like what that's like for you? If it's like film, music, or traveling, or if there's anywhere in particular that has inspired you?
I feel like every season is like something new, and that kind of changes. But I think sometimes it comes from like memory, or it comes from like I try to limit my research a little bit, because sometimes I prefer having little than having like too much. And I think having the privilege of being able to travel with work has been a big part of that. But I think a lot of it is people watching. A lot of like my posts is about like inspired about how kind of capturing that movement in, I guess, how things are tucked in a certain way and that sort of thing within that. And of course, like the element of culture is like a big part of like my ethos and my brand.
Yeah.
There's also one more thing. So before I kind of got into all of this furniture stuff, I remember I was walking past a shop in Crystal Palace actually.
Oh,
yeah, and this guy, he sells like a lot of this type of furniture. I remember going in there the first time, it was cool, he let me look around and all this stuff, but I was young, right? And I went back there the second time, and I saw this really nice chair. It was a yellow chair, and I was like, oh, how much is that chair? And then I remember this couple came in, and he kind of just brushed me to the side and was like, oh, don't worry, you can't afford it anyway. And I was just like, oh man,
that's so annoying.
Yeah, that made me feel like, you know, when you get that stomach feeling. Like,
yeah.
I was like, damn, man, that's kind of bad, man. But I just, till this day, I remember how that made me feel. And I was like, if I ever get a space, I don't ever want that space to feel like this elitist space, because this furniture can kind of feel like that. You know, some of this furniture is really expensive and all of that stuff. But I think the space is more so about community and letting people experience the space and having access ultimately to these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because the guy was actually there, he looked like me, he was black. So.
I know which guy you're talking about. It's on the corner, right, in Crystal Palace. Was it? With the shop?
It's not too far from the park, with the parade.
Yeah. I know. I feel like I know who you're talking about because...
The guy had dreads.
Yeah, he's not there anymore. He lost his shop, which is sad, but like that's a lesson. Don't do that.
Like, mad arrogant. I was just like,
I know.
Alright, cool, man.
Yeah.
No worries, man. I'll just keep it moving. But yeah. I remember that made me feel, and I don't ever want this space to feel like that.
Yeah, I think it's, well, RIP to his shop, but not really. But I think it's so important to be able to kind of, especially when you're just starting something or a bit younger, like going into a space and feeling like you can like ask questions and like not be intimidated. Like it's so great that you have this here where someone can just like walk past and come in and be like, oh, I never saw this before, I've never seen this before, I've never thought about anything like this. And God knows like what that will expand and inspire in them.
Yeah, no, 100%. A lot of people that come here are always like, oh, lovely space. I'm so inspired, so motivated to kind of do my own thing. And more power to you, man. If that's what we're going to do, like, I know my job is done, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think we have that much time left, so I'm going to wrap up with a few questions so then we have some time for everyone else to ask their questions. But I did want to know for both of you if there are any kind of, like as the kind of multidisciplinary like space in like fashion, art, design, everything kind of changes, are there any people or like shifts or trends that you've seen that's like exciting you and makes you feel like you want to kind of, you know, push forward more because you're like seeing other things within your community or other people you don't even know that are like keeping you like excited and inspired?
I'm not sure if it's like excited or inspired, but I feel like it's quite interesting that there are quite a lot of like fashion brands that are really getting into furniture or making furniture pieces that are in the coloration of their design. And we've seen that with like, I guess Bottega have done that with like their chairs, and like Gucci did it with like a series of like furniture pieces. So it's like you know when you have like an idea like, damn, I forgot about that ages ago. But yeah, it's just like, it just goes to show you should never let go of an idea. But it doesn't mean you can't do it still. So I think that's something to think about.
I think for me, I don't know. Like I kind of live in my own bubble, so I don't really don't always pay attention to what's going on, what's happening. But like Bianca said, I know a lot of brands are kind of getting into furniture design, which is sick to see. You know what I mean? But yeah, personally, there's nothing really that. Yeah, that's out there. That's not my bubble.
Yeah. And then my final question is, if you had maybe like one piece of advice, maybe that someone's given you or that's just from yourself, that for someone here that would want to kind of expand and do, like have a career similar to both of yours in their own way and try different things across like different mediums, is there like something you wish you knew when you were just starting out that you could relay?
I think it's important to be. Gosh, I was actually losing it. I think because we was actually speaking about this earlier, but like being okay with being perceived, because then I feel like the best person that's going to talk about your work is yourself, and I guess throughout my career, I haven't really, this is probably the most I've spoken about like what my behind thinking and stuff like that. But yeah, there'll be more of that next year, maybe.
It sounds so cliche, but I guess like believe in yourself, man. Like just have faith in what you're doing, honestly, and just keep going. That's all I can say.
Perfect, thank you so much. It was so great to speak to you both, and that was really insightful. We have a bit of time for some questions, so if anybody wants to ask anything.
Do you have like an interesting story behind a piece of furniture that you acquired?
Yeah, the chairs are not here, but they're like these two yellow chairs. They're called kangaroo chairs. And I remember me and my partner, we went to this furniture fair in Paris that we do once a year, and like we flew there, but bringing furniture back from abroad is kind of tricky sometimes. So I remember like when we bought it, the guy wrapped it up, and then I had to bring it back on a Eurostar. And I remember when I got to like the border, the woman was like, yeah, what's that? And I was like, they're just chairs. I just went to my aunt's house and just bringing them back to my house. And then she knew I was lying because she probably like was aware that there's a furniture fair going on. But then she just kind of bantered and just let me go through. I think that's probably like the most interesting story I have in terms of like acquiring a piece of furniture.
Nice one, thank you.
All good.
This is for you, Bianca. Do you think designing clothes for men has changed the way you view masculinity and the men in your life?
Yeah, no, it definitely has. I think every 3 years I think about like exactly. I guess when I first started making clothes, I never really thought about women wearing them, and women do wear my clothes. But then I also think about how I want the guys to feel, and I do want guys to feel attracted in my clothes, and I think that's really important. I don't think many menswear brands think about like guys feeling attractive. I think they just make clothes just for it to just sit on their bodies. My favourite designer that inspires me is Craig Green. I'm not sure he's like my all-time favourite. I'm trying to think who else like really and who else inspires me.
Yeah, like what brands
Oh,
at the
brand.
moment in the UK? Well, it could be worldwide, but I'm thinking UK.
So I was going to say something international then.
No, say international.
Okay. Well, international. Actually, of course, Phoebe Philo. She's one of my biggest inspirations. So yeah, she's British, and men wear her clothes, and she's a woman that designs women's wear. So I always thought about like that. Well, women should just buy my clothes anyway, so it's fine. And then I guess opposite side of the room, and then Miuccia Prada is my favourite because she's very few women that have created a heritage brand and still be in the front of two brands and it to be really popular and to be selling in this climate. So, and there's things that people are buying and reselling like constantly. So it's just pretty epic.
How did you build a team? Well, how did you build a team that you trusted with your vision?
How did I build a team? I don't know, it's really hard to say that because I was like the people that I have on my team at the moment, I met them on LinkedIn, so I think that kind of helps as well too. But the people that I like work with externally have been my friends for 10 years. So I work with Matthew who's in front and Jeff who's in the back. And that came about from like just having conversations. They both have their own businesses as well too, so I think that has helped. And then also believing in me. So I think you have to have people that believe in you. And the team that I have on my team at the moment, they believe in me wholeheartedly, and I think that's great. And I actually can have conversations with them, and they are like, they inspire me. So
yeah. For me, like my team is pretty small. It's just me and my missus. We recently got a team member, like an intern, But what I think is kind of difficult is, you know, when you're like, you know how you want a certain thing, you know your vision, it's difficult to kind of, I don't know, like, get your team to kind of fit that vision exactly how you see it. So I guess, I think like to get bigger or to expand, I guess you have to have a team. So I guess you just have to kind of let go of that control, per se. And I guess it just works out, it all works out in the end. But yeah, pretty small team, man. Just me, my missus, and our intern. Yeah. And my little son, who just turned 1. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
So Martina's question was, for Bianca, how do you merge your personality and your personal interests directly into the brand, and how do you see that evolving over time to, I guess, allow people who experience your brand to also continuously experience you and your, I guess, personal interests, aside from what the design world you want to kind of create around your consumer, etc. If that makes sense.
I think that's a hard question because I feel like it's something that I'm constantly discussing about merging my personality with the brand. But I think I've always found that the projects I've enjoyed the most is when I've showed myself most honestly, design-wise. And I think probably a testament to that was like when I did this collection, which was AW20, I felt like it was in presentations, it started getting a bit boring. And I was like, let's make a dance hall, like booth party thing. Because I saw this peep show actually, it's so funny. And I was like, let's make them into booths and like make men just like dance and express themselves in these booths. And then from there he was like, wow, that was the most best thing. That was the last thing I did in London. That was the most best thing, and that really helped like elevate and create like a bit of a domino effect for the next things I did. So I think it's a bit unanswered at the moment, but I think I just tried to push myself, and people around me pushed myself to show myself in the brand.
I guess just to follow on from that, do you think because you are a woman operating in the menswear space, that adds a level of difficulty in injecting your personality, or maybe how you maybe decide to show up on your social media? Because I think I follow you personally and also Bianca Saunders, and I understand that there's like quite a difference in who you are on your personal page, and well, you don't necessarily show up as much on the Bianca Saunders page. Is that like an intentional decision, or is that something that you're currently trying to navigate through?
Yeah, so I was like, damn, I feel exposed. I think it's something I'm trying to navigate through, but I feel like there's not an example of a black woman that looks like me that's doing luxury fashion and selling luxury clothes at that price point level. And then I guess luckily enough, like I came up in a generation where, you know, Black Lives Matter happened, and that of course like made me more visible. He was like, wow, there's a black brand, let's show her more, let's push her, like, and that sort of thing. I was able to get like a couple more stores because of those reasons. And then of course the way that I design is not necessarily like in a way that shows like this is a black brand, but the way that I think, that's how I design, and that's the clothes that I enjoy to make. So it's like a different, like, kind of like, how does it actually work? Because there's not like an example that I'm like, because I was like saying, I was like, the people I'm inspired by, they don't look like me. And like that experience of like their fashion is not what I'm going to get. So how do I make this last long? And also the people that are here, inspired by that journey, keep pushing it further so it can actually be something that's remembered. Because there's so many black brands in the past that have gone to Paris, I guess for some reason have either disappeared, and longevity within black designers is, I don't know, it's quite hard and it's quite short. And only now is when we're actually really creating history, like having people like Rose Bonner and, you know, Martine Rose, like these are the brands that people like, they're going to become like heritage brands. But when you think before that, of course you have also Botek, but it's a different side of design. So I feel like my blackness has actually been a thing that I've had to constantly think about how I present myself.
I think you've been the most visible that you've ever been this year. I found it really enjoyable to watch, and I think a lot of people who interact with your work also really love seeing you and your personality more. Was that about Bianca, the business owner who owns Bianca Saunders, or was that something that was representative of your internal personal journey?
I think it was more representative of my own personal journey. I was like, you know what? Gosh, I feel like I'm still like, you know, holding back a bit, but I think realizing, I don't know, I don't actually have a reason for that, but I think I've just been like, let's see if it works, let's try things, and I think it was more like testing things out and seeing if it works more than anything. And I think because I've kind of earned my stripes and I've won awards, so let me just, the door's open now, so the awards are won, so let's just go with it, and it's not going to go backwards from there. So I think, I don't know, I feel like if I started the journey the other way around, I'm not sure if I would have got the things that I've got. So I feel like I always want people to like the work first, and then be like, oh, okay, she's also very interesting, and then like me after. And I never wanted who I am to be deterrent of the brand, and I wanted it to be a certain person. And I think there's so many things I want to do, but I want it to also be like, I realized that like I was because the brand's my name, I'm so attached to the brand, it was very hard to kind of be like, okay, let's do other projects and separate that from me. So yeah.
But I think just to echo that, I think you're doing a fantastic job. And I think for the people in your journey and experiencing your journey, getting to see how you continuously show up unapologetically yourself and allowing your work to represent you at all times has been just magical. And I think you're making history. Both of you actually are making history in your own right. So it's really, really interesting, and just keep going, both of you. Anyway, yeah, that's it.
Thank you. You might have to shout.
Yeah, my question's for Armand. You spoke earlier about the possibility of like going into furniture design, and I'm just wondering what designers would you look to for inspiration, and what would the main emphasis behind your designs be?
Most of the designers I'm inspired by, again, mainly like thrived in the 60s and 70s, so like the Joe Columbus, Pierre Paulin, Eames is a massive one. And like there's many great like furniture designers like today, but I think if I was to ever design, or when I start designing furniture, I would try to kind of keep it radical, like the 60s and 70s were. And yeah, like even down to the materials that I'll use and stuff like that, I'll keep it like very like, yeah, 60s, 70s. Yeah.
Thank you.
As a fashion student, I love furniture and I love design. My question is, how do you believe that what you do adds purpose and has an impact on society?
Guys are asking some hard questions.
It's a very good question, but yeah, it's a hard question. Do you know what? Like for me, like I just want people that are not necessarily familiar with this design world to kind of to experience it. That's my main thing. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it, man. Yeah.
Sorry, I actually forgot it. Can you just say it one more time?
My question was, how do you believe that what you do has purpose and has an impact on society?
I don't think I really like thought about it, like, okay, this has purpose. I'm just like, I had a question in terms of like when I first started designing something, and I was like, okay, answering it, and then people responded to it quite like, oh, this is actually really good, and I was like, okay, I'm onto something. I think it's been more of encouragement of people around me that have shown the purpose of it, or I guess when people have said that they've been inspired by it, I think that's shown purpose. Yeah, so I think mostly just that. And actually a lot of the people that do buy my clothes, like, they're not like posting constantly, they're like, I'll just like, oh, you actually wear my trousers kind of thing. And they actually wear it like throughout their wardrobe. So I think that's a good purpose for the brand.
Yeah, and I think like it wasn't like intentional to like, oh yeah, here's a space and people can come and kind of experience the pieces. I think it's more so, again, giving people access to this kind of this space. There's one thing that one person that came to view the space, she said, and it stuck with me. She said that the space is really cool because it's like a museum, but it's even better because you get to actually experience the pieces. You can sit in the chairs, you can read these books, whereas in a museum you can't cross this line, you can't touch this. And when she said that, it kind of stuck with me, and I'm just like, you know what? I was just kind of, I guess that's making an impact. And I'll just kind of keep it like that. I'll keep it open to, as long as people respect the space, of course. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for all your questions. That's all we have time for today, but those were really interesting and some difficult questions. But thank you both, and thank you all for coming. Make sure you take time to take in everything.